Tonight we're venturing deep into the heart of Texas, where the land is as vast as its legends and just as terrifying. From eerie lights haunting dark rivers to ancient forces that never should have been disturbed, get ready for 5 of the most disturbing true Texas horror stories that will make you question what's real and what's lurking just beyond the horizon. But before we begin, here's something strange. Most viewers make one huge mistake. They leave without subscribing. And by doing so, they miss out on the creepiest, spine-tingling tales that only the bravest dare to hear. Don't be one of them. Hit that subscribe button now, because tonight's just the beginning and the terror waiting in the darkness is far from over. So, where are you watching from, and what time is it there? Let me know in the comments, because here the night is only getting started and the horror is waiting to unfold. Now let's dive into the darkness. In the summer of 1973, the small town of Corpus Christi was shaken by the disappearance of the Children of the Flame, a choir of 10 boys and girls who had, for months, filled the pews of St. Eustace's Church with haunting hymns. The children, innocent in appearance, were not like other choirs. Their robes, stitched with care and strange symbolism, were as unsettling as they were beautiful. A burning eye with teeth, not a cross, but a symbol of flame, fury, and hunger, was sewn into each garment. The children wore these robes like a second skin, and the songs they sang bore no resemblance to the hymns of the Lord. There was an edge to their voices, a hunger. When the children vanished one evening, the town of Corpus Christi fell into disarray. Their robes were found as though they had been left behind in haste, carefully folded on the church pews. Not a single trace of the children remained. The investigation was ineffectual. Questions went unanswered. The town's whispers spoke of foul magic, of dark rituals, and of an ancient hunger that had risen from the earth beneath their feet. The police, baffled and reluctant, soon abandoned the case. But some mysteries cannot be buried. Years later, in 1987, the church was scheduled for demolition. The rot of neglect had made the building unsalvageable, its walls crumbling like dry skin, its stained glass windows long shattered. The final blows came in the form of a wrecking ball, but what was discovered beneath the foundations would send a chill into the heart of anyone who dared to approach. When the walls of the church fell, they revealed something hidden beneath, a staircase. Carved deep into the limestone, the steps spiraled downward, leading to a dark, unknown depth. They seemed to defy reason. How could such a passage have remained concealed all these years? The air around it was thick with the scent of decay, as though the earth itself had sealed it away, eager to forget what lay below. The police descended with trepidation, their flashlights flickering against the oppressive blackness. Their footsteps were swallowed by the shadows, as though the very ground was consuming them, pulling them deeper into something far older than they were prepared to understand. They went into the dark for answers. They returned changed. One officer, a seasoned detective named Corbin, came back with his face hollow, his eyes gone. He had gouged them out with a crucifix, screaming incoherently about voices of gold and tongues of fire. His skin was burned as though scorched by an invisible flame, his clothes clinging to him like rags. He muttered incessantly, repeating one phrase over and over. The song is alive. It lives beneath, it calls to me. It knows. The others who ventured down never came back. At first the town thought it was the madness of one man, until the next day. In the center of the chapel where the altar once stood, the body of a second officer was found. Nothing but a charred outline, the shape of a man imprinted on the floor like a blackened ghost, his limbs splayed out in twisted angles. His body had been burned away. No flesh remained, only the outline of his form as though he had been consumed by some unseen fire. A single burned mark, shaped like an eye, was seared into the center of his chest. No trace of him existed, save for the outline, a silhouette of agony burned into the chapel floor for eternity. The town sealed the church off, but the damage was done. The legacy of St. Eustace's Church and the haunting melodies of the Children of the Flame had been released. The memories lingered like an echo. The whispers grew louder, felt on the wind, and soon enough there were rumors. Rumors of people hearing songs in the dead of night, songs that sounded like the children's voices but twisted into something unholy. The music came from below, deep beneath the earth. Some say the children still sing. They sing below the world. In the deepest, most unspeakable parts of the earth, the choir continues, their voices threaded with the hunger of the ancient things that live in the dark, things that have always been. things that feed on hymns, on prayers, on innocence. The songs they sing now are not of joy, but of sacrifice, songs of flesh and fire. And the children, they are no longer children, not in the way you or I understand it. They are servants now. Their voices are the keys to unlocking something far older than the town itself. A presence that waits. It is not a god or a devil. It is something far older, something that feeds on the song, a hunger as old as the earth itself. Some nights when the wind blows just right, the people of Corpus Christi claim to hear the voices, faint at first, then growing louder as the wind picks up. The children singing, echoing in a language no living person can understand. A language that makes your teeth bleed, that pulls you deeper into the earth with every note, every melody that calls to you. And those who listen, they are never the same. They cannot be, because there is something alive in those songs, something that has fed for centuries on innocence and fire, something that waits beneath the church. In the desolate vastness of West Texas, where the desert yawns like a wound left open too long, the land of Marfa harbors a secret too foul to speak openly. Beneath its cracked earth and sun-scorched air, something watches. And sometimes, when the night grows still and the wind carries whispers too ancient to understand, the Marfa lights appear. They hover like distant stars caught in a storm, flickering, darting, dancing across the horizon, sometimes white, sometimes red, and always unreachable. The locals, who have lived among the haunting vastness for generations, call them simply the Marfa lights. They tell their children not to chase them, to ignore them, for to pursue these lights is to walk into a place where the rules of the living cease to matter. But curiosity is a powerful thing, and even the most skeptical among them cannot resist the pull of that glowing mystery. In 1981, Lila Vargas, a woman with a stubborn thirst for the truth, ventured into the desert at twilight, her eyes set on the lights. She had heard the stories, the theories, the rumors, the scientific explanations. Gas, headlights, the reflective properties of minerals. She thought it was nothing more than a trick of the mind, but she couldn't resist. Her need to know, to understand, drove her deeper into the empty, yawning desert, toward the lights that flitted and played just beyond reach. She was never seen again, not for days, not for weeks. The authorities found her body weeks later, lying beneath the relentless desert sky. She was intact at first glance, but when they touched her skin, it crumbled like parchment, brittle and dry, as though all the moisture had been drained from her bones. It wasn't the body of a woman who had died in the wilderness. No, Lila had been emptied. She was hollow. Her body was a fragile shell, like that of a cicada, its life force siphoned away. The haunting part, the thing that twisted the stomach and tightened the throat, was her mouth. Her lips were frozen in a scream she had never finished. A scream that echoed in the dead wind, a sound that could never be heard. Her mouth was open, as though calling to something, or someone, just beyond reach. The locals tried to dismiss it. They spoke in hushed voices about the desert's dangers, the unforgiving heat, the wild things that lived beneath the earth. But no one could explain how her body had come back from the depths of the desert like that. It wasn't the heat, it wasn't dehydration. Something darker had taken her. The rumors began to swirl, like dust devils in the wind, spinning out of control. A figure in white, always in white, was seen standing on the hills that night. No one knew who he was. No one could get close enough to ask. His eyes, if they could be called that, were empty sockets, black voids where human sight should have been. Those who dared to look upon him swore they could feel him staring into them past the body, straight into their souls. His face was as featureless as a reflection in still water, smooth, unmarred, and yet utterly wrong. His presence chilled the air even as the desert heat clung to the skin. The figure was said to be following the lights, moving just behind them, a shadow cast by the radiant false stars. He walked without urgency, as though his steps had no need for time, and each movement seemed slow, deliberate, as if the earth itself bent to his will. Years passed, but the figure returned. Every August he came back, always on the same night, walking the hills and watching the lights flicker and disappear, only to return again. The locals could feel him deep in their bones. Those who lived long enough to tell the tale swore he never stopped watching. And then there was Frankie Alvarez, a man who had grown up with the stories of Marfa, who knew the desert's strange pulse better than anyone. One night in the summer of 1993, he ventured out to see for himself. The lights were dancing, a chaotic waltz above the land, and there, standing just beyond them, was the man in white. Frankie, brave and foolish, decided he would touch the man, prove he was real, or perhaps prove that the stories were simply myth. He walked towards him, a single breath in the hot air, and reached out with trembling fingers. The moment his hand brushed the man's arm, something melted off. Not like flesh, not like skin. His hand dissolved as though the very touch had turned it to acid, burning away his flesh and bone in an instant. His screams were swallowed by the wind, leaving only the echo of his pain. His fingers were gone, liquefied into nothing as though they had never existed. The man in white did not move. He simply watched, his eyes empty, his mouth a cavern of endless silence. Frankie fell to his knees, his body burning, as though the touch of that figure had ignited something deep inside him, a fire that would never go out. His vision blurred, his skin sizzled, but before he could scream again, the man in white was gone, vanishing into the desert as the lights flickered once more. Now, every August when the winds shift and the lights return, some say they still see him, standing on the hills, waiting, watching. And the lights? They lead the way, guiding the lost into the desert. Some people say that if you follow them long enough, you can find what they lead to, what the lights hide, and just maybe find him. But beware. If you touch the man or even speak to him, if you cross that boundary, you may not ever return the same. And if you do, you might come back empty, hollow, like the scream Lila never finished. A broken shell in the desert wind, never to find rest. There are stories whispered along the murky banks of Denton Creek, tales passed from trembling lips and cracked voices. These stories, told by teenagers during drunken nights, their breath heavy with the tang of cheap beer and the scent of mud, speak of a creature. But it is not a cryptid, not a thing of fangs or claws. It is something older, something far more terrible. A collector. They say it lives in the water, in the shadows beneath the trees. It does not lurk in the deep, waiting to drag you beneath the surface like some monstrous fish. Number. It waits for you to look, for you to see it. It doesn't hunt in the way that most things do. It does not need to kill you, not right away. It takes its time. It doesn't kill until it has watched, until it knows you, until it has made you see. The creature is not confined to the woods. No, it is more cunning than that, more insidious. It appears in the mirrors. It stares back at you from the blank glowing surface of your cell phone screen, but only at night, only when you are alone. It does not speak, does not rush toward you. It simply waits, its eyes dark as pits, fixed on you, waiting for you to realize you've seen it, waiting for you to understand what it is and what it wants. They call it the Devil of Denton Creek. The name isn't important, not really. What it is, what it does, is what matters. It is a collector. It doesn't need to kill you. It collects pieces of you, pieces of your soul, pieces of your reflection. In 1999, 4 high schoolers, teenagers full of reckless energy, drunk on youth and arrogance, decided to venture into the woods for a camping trip. It was the kind of thing teenagers do when the night is long, and the woods are thick with the scent of decay. They talked about the stories, the legends of the Devil of Denton Creek, but they laughed it off. They were smarter than the stories. They were invincible. They would prove that nothing lurked in those woods, that the mirrors were just mirrors. By the time the sun had set, the fire had flickered into ash, and the deep shadows of the forest had begun to stretch toward them. That was when it came. It came in a reflection at first, flickering in the surface of the creek, shimmering like a mirage, so brief, so fleeting. But they saw it. They all saw it, standing just at the edge of the water. It was drenched in mud, its body a twisted mass of bone and flesh. Bones were woven into its skin like jewelry, their sharp points jutting out from its body like grotesque spikes. The creature's face, if you could call it that, was a shifting thing, more mask than flesh. Eyes blacker than night, too dark to even reflect the moonlight, stared back at them with an intensity that gnawed at their insides. The air grew heavy, thick with a pressure they couldn't explain. The very woods around them seemed to pull in closer, as if the earth itself wanted to swallow them whole. The creature did not move toward them, not at first. It simply watched, like a predator who has seen its prey but chooses to enjoy the hunt. It waited. When the 4 teenagers left the woods, only 3 returned. The one who came back, Jonas, was naked, his skin pale, his body bruised and scarred, as though he had been dragged across jagged stones for hours. His eyes were wide, frantic. His mouth moved, but the words that came out were nonsensical, incoherent. He babbled, like a child lost in a dream he could not wake from. His fingernails were gone. Every last one had been pulled from his hands, leaving the raw flesh beneath, tender and pink, exposed to the cold night air. His hands shook constantly as if the weight of what he had witnessed would never let him go. And then, as they found him, as they rushed to his side, Jonas clawed at his own stomach, his face twisted in terror, his voice rising in pitch. He used a penknife, the blade flickering in the dark, and carved something into his own skin. It was jagged, barely legible, but it was clear enough. A warning. The message. I showed him my reflection. He showed me what I really am. The police never found the other 3 teenagers. Not their bodies, not their souls, only their echoes. The forest swallowed them whole, like a mouth opening in the earth itself, and no one has ever spoken of them again. But Jonas never spoke again. He was never the same. No one who saw him after that night could look at him the same way. His eyes, once sharp and full of life, now held nothing but emptiness. He spoke only in fragments, his mind cracked, his sanity stripped bare. And every night, in the deepest hours, he would stare at his reflection in any glass he could find, cell phone screens, mirrors, windows, and tremble as the creature's face returned. Drenched in mud, woven with bones, its eyes sinking deeper, watching, waiting. And sometimes, in the dark, Jonas would whisper the same words. He's still watching, he's still waiting, he knows what I really am. The devil of Denton Creek doesn't need to kill you right away. It doesn't need to chase you, it collects. And once it has shown you your reflection, once it has made you see yourself as you really are, there's no turning back. Because you are no longer whole. You are empty. A collector's prize. In the town of Beaumont, there is a house that shouldn't exist. Built on Barrett Street, it stands, rotting, sagging, and alive with something foul. It was once a funeral parlor, a place where the dead were prepped, embalmed, and readied for their final rest. It was a place that smelled of formaldehyde and death, until the day the mortician, Ellis Cage, was arrested for what he called his art. Cage wasn't content simply burying the dead. No, he wanted more, much more. He believed death was only the beginning, that the corpse could still be an expression of life, a performance. He filled them with wax, turning their limbs into grotesque marionettes. He puppeted their arms and legs, their bodies becoming nothing more than empty vessels to hold his twisted vision. He sewed their lips into cruel horsehair smiles, crafting a distorted vision of joy, a joy that would forever mock the dead. Cage called them his audience, the ones who would always watch but never speak. His creations, frozen in their unnatural poses, sat silently in the dim waxen light, clapping their hands in stillness. They had no choice. They were bound to him, to his whims, to his need to see life from a place of death. But the townspeople didn't understand. They couldn't understand. When the authorities uncovered what Ellis Cage had done, when the truth bled out from the walls of his funeral parlor, he was arrested and the house was condemned. No one was brave enough to even stand near it. They tried to demolish it 5 times. The first time the bulldozers came to tear it down, to wipe it from the face of the earth, but the walls bled, thick, dark human blood, type O negative, the rarest kind, began to seep from every crack, every crevice. It poured down in rivulets, staining the ground red, as though the house itself refused to die. The workers panicked, abandoning the scene in terror. They couldn't explain it, but they didn't need to. No one wanted to get any closer. The second time they tried, the same thing happened. And the third, and the fourth, and the fifth. Each time the house bled, as though it had tasted something in its walls that it couldn't let go of. Each time, the workers disappeared, leaving behind only the sickening stain of blood on the earth beneath. No one in Beaumont had the courage to try again, but the house never stopped bleeding. At night, when the moon was high and the streets grew quiet, the house on Barrett Street was never truly still. They say you can still see it even now through the grime-coated windows, silhouettes twitching, jerking, bowing in eternal applause. The waxen figures, stiff and unmoving by day, come to life at night. They are no longer the passive audience that Cage created. They are something else now. They move, they watch, and they applaud. One night, a man named Ted McAllister, drunk, foolhardy, and daring, decided to test the legend. His friends dared him to spend the night in the house. The rules were simple. He had to stay inside until dawn, alone, and he could return with proof. Anything to show he'd survived. Maybe it was the alcohol, maybe it was pride. But Ted was compelled by something deeper than either. He wanted to see. He entered the house with nothing but a flashlight, his shadow playing across the blood-streaked walls. The air was thick, heavy, saturated with a stench that clung to the skin. The house was alive, like a corpse still breathing, its pulse thumping in the dark. The hours passed, the house creaking, groaning, as though it was aware of his presence. And then, just before dawn, Ted finally saw them. They stood in the upstairs windows, their bodies twitching, their stiff limbs jerking as if forced by invisible strings. They were clapping for him. Their empty eyes, waxen, grotesque, glittered in the pale moonlight. They applauded, their decayed fingers creaking with the effort, clattering like brittle bones, clapping in time with a rhythm that only they understood. But then Ted saw something else. There was something behind them, something that had not been there before. The shadow of a man, a tall, distorted figure standing in the doorway. The figure was drenched in blood, its face obscured by the same wax Cage had once used to create his masterpieces. Its eyes were wide, empty, a smile stretched too tight. The shadow grinned, the thin lips stretched wide like a mask, and for a fleeting moment, Ted could almost hear the sound of bones breaking under the weight of that smile. The next morning, when Ted's friends returned to the house to find him, they found something much worse than death. They found him lying on the cold floor, his body contorted in ways that no human body should be able to bend. His teeth had been removed, every single one. His eyes were stitched open, the thread pulled so tight that it left the skin raw and irritated. His mouth was a frozen, gaping scream, yet no sound came from him. In his hand, he clutched a note. It was written in something dark, red, but it was not blood. The note read, "They're so proud of what they've become. No one has dared to enter the house on Barrett Street since. No one wants to test what Ellis Cage started, but the house still stands, soaked in blood, stained by the silence that speaks louder than any scream. And at night, if you're standing in the right place, just beneath the glowing windows, you might still hear the sound of applause. You might still see the silhouettes jerking and bowing, their waxen faces eternally twisted in silent joy. They will never stop, and neither will the house." In the year 2007, a construction crew in Amarillo, Texas, digging for a new subdivision, stumbled upon something that should have never been uncovered. Deep beneath the earth, tangled in the roots of long-forgotten trees, they unearthed a book bound in human skin, its cover slick with the faint residue of some ancient, unseen oil. Its surface shimmered almost as though it were alive, pulsing with the kind of energy that seemed to vibrate just beneath the skin. The crew was wary at first, unsure of what they had found, but they were curious too, and curiosity has a way of blinding men to the dangers they can't understand. They took the book to the local university, hoping that perhaps a linguistics professor could shed some light on the strange, shimmering script written within. But what they couldn't know was that opening that book would set in motion a chain of events far darker than they could have imagined. Dr. Lawrence Haggard, the professor who first laid hands on the book, was a man of reason. A scholar who had spent decades studying ancient languages, lost texts, and forgotten symbols. Yet, when he opened the book in front of his class, his face twisted in horror. The words on the pages seemed to shift, flickering like oil on water, changing their shapes as if they had a life of their own. The room fell silent. The students stared, entranced, unsure if they were seeing the same thing. Dr. Haggard's eyes widened, his mouth muttering words in a language that no one could recognize. He dropped the book and staggered back, his hands trembling. Then, in one terrible moment, the professor set himself on fire. Not from a match, not from a spark, but from within. His body combusted, flames licking up his limbs as he screamed, "I see the words in my blood." The fire spread quickly. The students fled in terror, their minds too overwhelmed to make sense of what they had witnessed. Dr. Haggard's body was found later, a charred husk, the book gone. They tried to seal the book's secrets, but nothing could stop it. The strange ink had already infected the university's walls, its influence seeping into the soil beneath the campus. A week later, Sophia Albrecht, a student who had touched the book during the chaos, began to dream. But these were no ordinary dreams. Each night she saw a god beneath the soil, its massive form writhing in the darkness. It whispered to her in a voice that was both ancient and new, a voice that felt like it came from within her very bones. It spoke of meat, of hunger, of an ancient god that longed to consume, to wake, to feast on the living and the dead alike. It told her of a time when it had risen, and it promised that it would rise again, but only when its name was called, when it had been acknowledged by one willing to let it feed. Sophia vanished a week later. No trace of her was ever found. The police could never uncover what had happened, though some whispered that she was claimed by the god in her dreams, that she had given her soul in exchange for power to call forth that thing beneath the earth, to give it the flesh it so craved. And then, as the whispers of the book's curse spread, it began to travel. People say the book has passed from hand to hand, like a disease, each owner meeting a terrible end. Some say it writes itself, new names appearing on its pages in real time, as though it records the lives of those who dare to touch it. It tracks them, marking them with its ink before it claims them entirely. Some have looked at the pages and seen their own names written in the shimmering script. Others say it's only a matter of time before the book knows you, before your name is written in its cursed ink. There are those who claim that the Amarillo skin book still exists in the town of Amarillo. Some say it resides beneath the ground, buried where it was first found. Others say it's been passed to people who have no idea what they hold, who never fully understand the weight of what they possess until it's too late. It whispers, always whispering, calling those who will listen, promising them a glimpse of the god beneath the soil, offering them forbidden knowledge that no mortal mind can bear. Some say the book is waiting, that it has already marked its next victim, perhaps someone in your life, perhaps even you. Because if you've ever heard whispers in your sleep, heard the sound of something calling from beneath, felt an unseen weight pressing on your chest in the dead of night, then maybe, just maybe, your name is already written there. And when the book speaks to you, when it calls you by your name, there's only one thing left to do: answer.